I didn't quite go up as far up this local mountain as I hoped, but well, here's a bunch of trees. Hello and welcome back. This week I'm very excited because I am reviewing Danielle Holian's book, The Dilemma. And oh my gosh, it hit me for so many reasons and in so many different ways. So, for one, I was kind of pleasantly surprised because I had set up reviewing Danielle's book a while ago, and it was just long enough ago that when I opened the book this week and I saw poetry, I was like, wait a second, what is this? And so I went back to our conversation we had about, just setting up logistics and stuff, and she very specifically said my new poetry book. Regardless, it was a very pleasant surprise. And I think some of why I also like it is I'm just kind of getting more used to reading poetry, certainly than before. If you go way back to my very first blog at the start of this, my initial Book Bear blog, I really took a break from reading for a while just because, in high school you always have to read, and I was a comm major in college, so I was constantly reading, and it just really sucked the joy and the entertainment out of it. And even before, I was never a really big poetry reader. I was definitely more fiction. I still am more on the fiction side of things, but I'm really gaining a deeper appreciation for poetry, and I think some of it is because, like Danielle describes in her author's note, it's very cathartic. And I've said that too in a couple of my poems, and you can check those out on my blog. But especially when you're just feeling those very strong emotions, whether they're positive or not so positive, it sometimes just feels almost better to put them out in poetry, I think. That's just my opinion, and it would appear that Danielle shares that opinion. Because in her author's note, she describes how she was in this relationship and she loved this person very, very deeply, and he crushed her. It sounds like he completely broke her heart, her trust, and she had this dilemma of, do I stay, do I go, do I love him, do I not? And I think that's just very relatable. I know it's relatable for me. I know I've kind of alluded to it in some of my other posts, but her breakup just really hit home for me. And I think the fact that it's a collection of poems that kind of describes the entire arc of the relationship, or at least the majority of the arc of the relationship, so still being in love, realizing something's wrong, knowing something's wrong, and breaking up, and then the healing process afterward. I just think it was very relatable and so reflective of my own experience. I saw my heart on the page in her words, and I think for me at least that was just incredibly powerful. Now, I'm not saying that in order to have a better appreciation of this book, or any appreciation for this book for that matter, that you need to have gone through a breakup. I really don't think you do. I think really just kind of any loss has fairly comparable feelings. Maybe it's a super best friend that you used to have and now you don't talk anymore, or maybe it's a family member who moved away or who passed or something, but regardless, obviously the betrayal isn't the same, but the fact that they're there and you love them and you miss them, and then they're not, so you miss them more, and you just kind of always miss them, and then you have to try to figure out what your life is without them. Honestly, unless you're just one of those people who are I hate poetry, first of all, check yourself. Not to be aggressive, but chances are you just probably haven't found poetry that has resonated with you yet. I know I definitely didn't for a really long time. And by no means is her poetry super complicated to understand. By no means is it using some hoity-toity elevated language and you feel you have to figure out what the deeper meaning is. It's just her raw emotion and reaction to what happened with this person. And I really love the fact that in her author's note at the beginning, she says that it's all the stuff that she did say to him and that she wished that she said to him. And I think that's really powerful, because especially in those moments where you don't really get to say goodbye, whether you just don't at all, or like you don't know how to in that moment, and then you kind of like miss that moment. And then you're in the shower like 3 days later and you're like, oh my gosh, I should have said this. Like, that, I felt like, was this poetry collection. It was this poetry collection saying, hey, I really freaking loved you and you really cut me to the core. Like, you hurt me so badly, but you know what? I'm okay. It might be taking me a while, but I'm okay. And I think that's really powerful. You know, and like, just with everything that's been going on recently, you know, I keep getting like these weird little coincidences and signs, and you may or may not believe in coincidences. I'm not entirely sure where I stand. But I just keep being told that like the universe has got your back. Like, there are no such thing as coincidences. Put it out there and it'll manifest. And I just feel like the fact that like this poetry has been coming to me now, as I'm like, I think at the tail end of the healing process, it was just very evocative and really emotional. And I love the fact that I could just sit there and feel the things. And I love too the fact that Danielle actually, I know I keep talking about this author's note, you just gotta read it, it's good. If you read nothing else in the book, read the author's note. Like, she says that she hopes that you approach it with an open heart, and that you just let yourself feel the things that you feel while reading the poems. And I think that's really powerful, because coincidentally I did see this post today, and it was about how we've really done a disservice in this country to our, in other countries I suppose, to our male peers, saying that like, you have to be tough, you have to man up, like, don't show emotions are weak. But like, we don't talk about the fact that women are also given such a hard time about feeling emotions. Like, if we're too emotional, we're seen as unstable. Like, what like, but then if we don't show enough emotions, then we're just cold. And so I appreciate the fact that Danielle straight up says, like, let yourself feel these emotions. And I think that's really important, because I know that was something that not necessarily I had a problem with in my relationship, but my former partner did, was that like, he would definitely feel things, but he didn't necessarily have the vocabulary to communicate them, at least to me. And I think that's some of why it really hurt when we ended things. It's because like, I didn't know. And I know that's kind of a tangent, and that's not entirely about the book itself, but to a degree it kind of is about the book, because it's like my dilemma reflected from hers. Like, her dilemma, it sounds like he cheated on her, and I mean, how do you get over that? Like, that's never happened to me, but that just sounds so incredibly difficult. And so again, I think it just gets back to the fact that like, this is just a very raw emotional book, and I think if you're going through something, whether it's romantically or not, if you're just like in any sort of grieving process, I think that this has the potential to really touch your heart. The poetry is really well written. I like the fact that it's not all like, again, it's not all like Shakespearean sonnets and stuff. Some of them are just two-line poems. Some of them are actually like long works. Some of them have a rhyme scheme, some of them don't. And so I think the fact too that it's not overly structured just makes it that much more accessible and that much more enjoyable. So this was kind of a tangenty, ranty review, mostly about feeling the feelings. But you know, I think that's the beauty of poetry, is that it allows us to feel in a different way. Because it's not like you're just sitting there journaling like, I feel happy because this, or I feel frustrated because this. You're just kind of like word vomiting your feels. And I think Danielle did a really excellent job of doing that in a way that I think has the potential to touch a lot of people and to really resonate. So again, if you like poetry, definitely recommend. If you're not sure about poetry, definitely recommend. If you don't like poetry, at least read the author's note, because it might make you interested in the book, and I think it's definitely one worth reading, or at least giving it a chance. So that's all I have for the dilemma. Thank you so much. I will be back next week with my penultimate book for the year, Tears Run Dry by Patrick Lindsay. Thanks.